Hey everybody, welcome back to another YouTube Live. And today we're going to be following up on our last session for Splunk AppDynamics Analytics and how to be awesome with ADQL. And today we're going to focus more on some of the more advanced ADQL searches, the widgets, and also powering everything with data collectors, which is additional information getting pulled over by the APM side of things from the transactions that are going through your application. And now I am Christopher Bonanno, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Kelvin Miller, who's going to be walking us through the demo. But before we do that, let's go ahead and start jumping into the agenda for today. Now, this is a little bit different. It is a premiere as opposed to a true YouTube live, but we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box over to the right. We do have some panelists there to answer your questions. We'll take some time at the end for a Q&A before we go into closing thoughts and wrapping things up. As always, this content is created for and by Splunk AppDynamics, which is a Cisco product. So all of the property of this content is Cisco's and Splunk. But we are here to help you be successful with the products that you already purchased or that you are interested in learning to maybe develop additional skills. And we want to foster those skills. We want to foster those lessons. We want to help you be more successful with the product so that you adopt it, your team adopts it, and it's helpful, it's useful. If it's not helpful or not useful, then why are you doing this? So we want to make sure that we check all those boxes for you. So now for today's agenda on the analytics, we're going to be going over a recap quickly on the analytics portion that we talked about last time, where we were first introducing you to analytics and building you up to start talking about the ADQL. And then we also want to touch on what data collectors are, because it's going to help tremendously to start stitching together missing pieces of context within your ADQL visualizations when you're doing your searches. And then Kelvin's going to take over and walk us through a demo and pretty much how to start performing those more advanced searches after making sure that data collectors are already configured. And then we'll leave some time for a Q&A. But like I said, just drop a question in the chat over to the right along the way, and we will still be trying to answer that as well. I will be turning on comments so that if you miss your opportunity to ask a question later on, we will take that question as a comment later on this recording. And then we'll leave you with some closing thoughts and wrap things up. Now let's go ahead and first start talking about the analytics recap. So last time we showed you this picture and we started explaining that you have a bunch of events data that's going into your controller and your event service cluster, which is run in Elasticsearch, and then you perform an ADQL, an AppDynamics query language search against those data points. And from that, you would be able to start visualizing the data and not only organizing it into charts and tables, but also start understanding how it affects the greater business, whether it's some sort of a service flow, or if you have a certain flow that you want to make sure that users are going through all the way. And if they have a drop off, you want to understand that. You might want something like a funnel view, or you might want to know your experience levels, or you might want to correlate it to some other context. Whatever the case may be, we have different visualizations, we have different options for you, and it all starts with making sure that you're getting that data in there and that you have the ability to search through that and start organizing and slicing and dicing from there. Now, data collectors are a powerful tool to help you get there. So say that you go and you start building a dashboard, you start building ADQL searches because you want to make a widget to put on that dashboard, but you don't have the right context that you need. You need to understand maybe what kind of bank card is being used, whether it's a Visa or it's a MasterCard or an Amex. And it's something that is being collected in the code, but AppDynamics doesn't necessarily know that you want that information. So what you can do is you can create a data collector. And now data collectors, per our documentation, allow you to supplement business transaction and analytics data so that you can kind of understand more about your application. For example, let's just look at this down here. Now, if you have a bill pay payments as a business transaction, you might be getting some errors and you might not understand exactly why, but it might be related to the type of card or the amount of payment that is being made. So, how would you ever know this? You would maybe be able to go and look in the actual application logs, maybe, or you might be able to hopefully vet it out in the performance testing before it gets put out into prod. But sometimes you don't have that option. So, having extra context from an APM side of things drastically helps you diagnose those types of situations. And then when it's already in there, you can start pulling and slicing and dicing the data, like I said before, with ADQL so that you can understand the relationship of when it is an amount over $500, say, how often do we have errors? Or when we're dealing with a certain type of card that is used for payment, what's the relationship of revenue impact? If we can't accept payments from MasterCard and we want to monitor the amounts for every single MasterCard request, then you would start to understand, hey, this is how much we lost not being able to accept MasterCard. Things like that. Context that helps you understand real business context. Context that helps you understand real business impact by looking at what the code is giving, also what your users are giving back and the code is taking and going forward with. How can it impact your application? Maybe there's a space, or maybe there's a wrong letter or value that was given, and it just blows everything up in the process. So having this extra information adds extra context or data points that you can pull from or assess or troubleshoot from. Now, if you have specific performance triggers that pop up and it's because it depends on the input given to it by a customer, then you wouldn't have any other way of knowing unless you start correlating maybe logs or things like that. But if you don't have access to that, or if you just want to get there faster, if you start having data collectors, then you would be able to start doing searches and start understanding the correlation of certain values that are put in and how it affects your overall application, and therefore how is it affecting the business. And now you can grab this information from what customers are putting in, or what kind of values are being expected but not being fulfilled. You can do that by two types of data collectors within AppDynamics. You can do it with a method invocation data collector, or you can do it as an HTTP diagnostic data collector. And then there's two configuration options, which are either manual or automatic. Now, we're not going to jump into this too far. We're going to kind of lightly touch on some of this in the demo, but we're not going to assume that you don't know anything about data collectors, because the focus of today is how to use ADQL with data collector information. I will attach a link in the chat as well, the video description for the recording on other videos that we have on setting up data collectors, because we're not going to do a deep dive on setting up data collectors today. We want to really spend more time in analytics and going over what we promised, how to be awesome in ADQL. Now, I will let you know, because I don't want anyone to get confused in terms of what is a data collector versus an information point, and then what do they have kind of in common. So a data collector is always in the context of a business transaction, and it's about information that is being collected from string information, or in the context of a string. So the values that are getting passed through the code is getting picked up, and that string information can get matched with the data collector you have set up, and it'll start giving you all of that extra context, not only in the flow map of a business transaction, but also in the snapshot. And then you have information points, which are independent of business transactions, and it's usually something to do more with a number value or a metric that is not necessarily associated with a business transaction, and it is not necessarily reliant on being a string value. It's more of how many times did this occur. And then what is in common for both sides is that it is collecting information that is being passed through the application. It's just a matter of, do you need this extra context? Do you need to be able to do a query against it in analytics? And or are you just needing a table there collecting some information on it, and don't need more than that or extra context from that? And that's where you would decide which one you would want to use. Now we're going to focus and stay on data collectors, but this is good contrast for you to understand. Now the navigation to get to data collectors is a little bit different, like you can see here. This is where the information points are that I just gave you an example of or explanation of. But we're going to really spend most of our time looking at the information coming from data collectors. So I want to show you how to get to it in the application view. So once you get into an application, you go down to configuration, go up to data collectors, and this is where you'd be setting it up, whether it's the method invocation or the HTTP request type of collectors. You can do that in here. And now we already know that some of the benefits that we've been talking about, all this time, right? So you want that extra context, that extra information on your most critical business transactions, so that when you're troubleshooting, you can keep track of, is there a certain pattern going on between it? Like that example that we gave earlier, is it the type of card? Is it the value that they're processing a payment for? Did they have a space in their login? All these weird little things that could be impacting your application performance that you wouldn't have understood or seen happen, or it never got a chance to be vetted in performance testing before the application was actually released. Sometimes things change out in the wild versus, in a controlled environment. And then you would be able to start understanding basically code arguments, as well return values from those customers, basically understanding what's impacting the overall business transaction. And it would show all of that extra context in your flow maps, as well in snapshots when you're drilling down into, understanding really what's happening downstream or through a call graph or something like that. You want to start understanding really what is impacting your application, and this really gives you a lot of context there. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Kelvin to walk you guys through the demo.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction to this demo. Today's demo, we're going to cover how to configure data collectors and how to do ADQL searches using those data collectors, along with adding them onto a dashboard. So let's go into the controller, and you'll see that right now we're in the AD financial application. From here, we're going to click configurations. Then from the menu, configure menu, we're going to click on instrumentation. And across the top, you'll see the data collectors tab. You'll notice that there's two types of data collectors listed here on the method invocation data collector along with the HTTP request data collector. Let's start off by taking a look at the method invocation data collector. So I'm going to click on the loan application and edit just so we can see how this is built out. So first thing we did was we gave the data collector a name. We told it that we wanted to be enabled with transaction snapshots along with sending data over to analytics. Next, we picked out the actual fully qualified class name that we want the data collector to be pull the information from, along with the method name. As you scroll down, you'll notice that you'll see the values of the actual data collector return values. So let's take a look at loan amount first. Click on edit. You'll see that you name the return value loan amount. The method parameter index is one, and the getter chain is a get integer with the parameter of loan amount. All of these are pretty much set up pretty much the same, so I'm not going to go through each one of them, but that's pretty much how you would set up the data collector for a method invocation data data collector. So I'm gonna hit save here, and I'm gonna, oops, actually I don't have access to hit save on this demo environment, so I'm just gonna hit cancel to cancel out. But I also want to show you that you also have to pick which business transaction you want to pull this data from. Here we are pulling this data from the loans application submission business transaction. So when you create a data collector, once you hit next, it'll bring up this screen right here. So you can pick which business transaction you want the data collector to pull the data from. All right, so let's look at the HTTP request data collector. If we look down here, I'm just going to click on session ID, edit. You notice that we named it session ID. Here we put a check mark in to apply to all new business transactions. So any new business transaction created, it would automatically start pulling the session ID if it's in the HTTP request. Next is we're telling it to show in the transaction snapshots. So any transaction snapshots that has the session ID, it will show in the data collector section. And you also have it reporting into the analytics. So for this session ID, to set it up, we just have the header set up as session ID. So any headers coming in with the name session ID, that return value will be sent to analytics and be part of the snapshot. So I'm going to cancel out of this. And you notice here also that you have the configure transaction user using this data collector, same as the method invocation data collector. But you notice on this one, we just have a plethora of business transactions chosen, and any new business transaction that's created will automatically get put over in the active section of this business transaction configuration. So I'm going to cancel out of this. So that's pretty much how you create and configure data collectors. Next, let's go to actually looking at these data collectors and manipulating the data of these data collectors in ADQL. So I'm going to click on Application, Analytics, and from Analytics, I'm going to click on Searches. And now I can click on Add, and since we're doing ADQL, I'm going to click on Query Language Search, and you'll see that now I have a box where I can type in the different searches. Now, if you're looking at this screen right here, you notice data is selected and we're able to see all of the fields that's been created within analytics. And the data collectors usually fall up under the custom method data. And you notice that if the names are listed from the data collectors that we just looked at in this list. So I'm looking at loan amount, loan ID, loan type, and there's several others that listed from that application that data collectors was created for. But we're basically going to be working with those three: loan amount, loan ID, loan type. But you can see there's a plethora of different fields that you can pick from. So let's start off by creating a simple search for these data collectors, just a simple search. So let's start off with, let's do a sum for loan amount. As you see, I start typing loan amount and then the actual data collector shows up that I can pick from. And now close my parentheses. And you notice that with the data collector, it added segment user data in front of it. That's just because it's a data collector, it added those two segments in front of it. And now from here, I'm going to pick the application so we can narrow it down. So I'm going to do where, I'm going to do application, and we was equals to, and we was in the AD financial application. So I'm going to click it, and I'm going to click search, and this should give us the sum of all the loans during the last 1 hour. Now we have a sum. We could look over here and we could look at different widgets we can use. You notice that now we have all of the top widgets are black and the ones below it's gray. So once you do your search, and depending on the outcome, the output of your search, depending on which one of these widgets you can use. So now I'm just going to show you right quick the different widgets and how they look: column, pie, table, and time map. Now you really don't get the gist of how these widgets look with just one item being reported in. So let's add some more information or another column to it so we can see, get a better look at how these widgets actually come out when you start adding more information into your search. So let's put in loan type. Let's also say, let's get the loan type in here. So let's start type loan, comma space, and let's keep the sum of loan amount. Hit it. Now look at the widget. It brought in all of the different loans that you can take. And then if you scroll on top, it shows you the total loan amount for the last 1 hour period. And now you can choose different widgets still across the top. So now this is a pie, and here's the simple bar chart. So that's just showing you over this 1 hour period. But what if we want to make this time series? We need to know how much, what's the sum of the loan amount for every 5 minutes. So now I can go into here. I'm gonna remove this. Actually, I'm going to keep this, and I'm gonna add series, parentheses, event, timestamp, comma. And I said 5 minutes, so I'm gonna put 300 seconds. I'm gonna close parentheses, comma, space, and now we're gonna do a search, and we get a syntax error, series event timestamp, and the syntax is because I have a period instead of a comma. Let's fix that and hit search again. And there go our chart. And now you can see, since we're looking at time series, we can have a whole different line of widgets that we can use. And this is how they look, the different widgets look. So let's go back to area. And now you see, using these searches is pretty much like using the regular ADQL searches. You just picking from the list of data collectors. If you use ADQL before, it's the same concept. You just slicing and dicing with numbers coming in through data collectors. So you're able to use these searches and put them on dashboards. So what I like to do now is go to a dashboard that I created using using ADQL searches, and just go through how some of these searches look on dashboards. Before I do that, though, I do want to leave one thing to show you how you can take a search and put it straight onto a dashboard from here. So if I was to click on action, I can click add to dashboard. I can create a dashboard and name it right here, or I can do an existing dashboard and pick from the existing dashboards that's already created, and the widget would just show up on that dashboard, and then you can just drag and drop it where you want it to be. But since I've already created a dashboard, I'm not going to add any more searches to it. We're just going to go over to it, and we're just going to go through some of the searches within that dashboard so you can understand how you can use these searches to create a nice high level dashboard, more of a business type dashboard to let the business know what's going on over a period of time. All right, so let's go over. So here's the dashboard. This is the dashboard. It's still using the AD financial information. You see across the top, created several widgets that contains just a simple number. So if I double click on that number, it takes me back into ADQL, and I can see my search where I'm doing a select sum the loan amount for the AD financial application. I'm gonna hit cancel. Also, when you create these, you have items over here where you can edit. Right now I have the information shown as white. That way you don't see it. If I change it to black, you'll see it. You can also change the different numbers. Right now I have it going by millions because the loans amount over a period of time is so high that I changed it to use millions, but you can do automatic, or you can do exact number, or you can do thousands. But on this one I did millions. Another thing I do when using it is I do transparent, just can so it can be just a floating number. It doesn't have a background. So I'm gonna change it back over to white. I'm gonna hit save. And that's how you could use it, just to bring in a number and how it would look. Right here, I have another search. and it's pretty much close to the search that we used before, but you can see that I'm using loan type and I'm using the count. So this will give me how many loans was taken over that period. So now if I go over the period, it's like this one shows 370, 449, 402. So if I hit cancel, so and look at the last, it's set for the last 4 hours. So I'm seeing how many loan types was coming in for the last 4 hours. Same thing here. I used the time app and I'm using small business, well, loan types, and you can see in the inside it shows you the sum of all the loans for each loan type. Here, this one is not using, it's not using data collector. This search right here is actually using user experience. So if I click on it, which is another good view, you could look at your transactions and you can look at the user experience. And I'm doing a count for each one of these business transactions for each user experience just to see how the application is performing compared to the business outcome. Hit cancel on this. Here you can see this search right here is showing the loans by city, the number of loans by city. So if I look at this search, you see the data collector is for location, city, and account. So it's telling that way I will get the count of how many loans is being placed by within each city. The next one is at more of a is a loan time series metrics that will show you the number of loans within for every 60 seconds. I believe I have this one set for, and it gives you a nice graph down here. And the good thing about this graph is it's active. So if I click on each one, it removes the actual graphs from metric from the graph. And now you can just see that one if that's the only one you're interested in, or you can add them back. So let's take a look at this one. And you can see for time series ADQL searches, you have to add the series event timestamp and the time period you want it to separate each metric into. So this one is being separated into 60 seconds. Earlier I showed you how you can do it for 5 minutes, I believe. And this is just a table where you can create a table view of multiple things. Like this shows you the loan ID, the applicant's last name, location, city, and loan amount. And to do it, you just separate each field by a comma and get from your transaction where you want it to pull from. So that's pretty much ADQL and how you use it to with data collectors to create dashboards, how to pull data from it. I mean, it's a very powerful tool, especially using the business IQ type data collectors. So you can compare how the business is performing to how the application is performing. So this is just a high level overview of how you can use ADQL and data collectors to create a dashboard along with creating different types of searches. These searches can get more complex. You can actually have expressions within the ADQL search if you want to calculate something using the numbers that's being pulled in by data collectors. You could do that, but this is basically what I wanted to cover, and I'm gonna hand it back over to Chris so he can continue with the presentation.
Great job, Kelvin. That was a really good demo, and we got in depth on what we can do with the data collectors in terms of ADQL and analytics. It really bridges the gap if you're really trying to tie something together and you'd have no other way of doing that unless you grab a little extra data from that APM side. So very cool, very useful. But I want to give some time for us to stop and see if there are any other questions that haven't already come in. Please go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer that for you. And we'll give it about a minute to let those come in and to allow our panelists to answer. All right, we're going to be opening up comments for this video. So if you guys have any other questions or feedback or anything like that, go ahead and look for that feature to open up on this video, and we'll try to still follow up with you there. And thank you so much for those of you that did ask any questions along the way. Let's go ahead and start closing out. This is an enablement meant for those of you that have AppDynamics or learning AppDynamics to start being successful with the product. But if you're wanting to start taking assessments that are on demand or getting instructor-led courses, preparing you for certification, allowing you to get those badges and put it on your resume of achievements that you've made to better yourself with products like Splunk AppDynamics, then definitely check out our Cisco U. There's on top of using it for Splunk AppDynamics, there's a bunch of things on there that Cisco has for networking, for security, and everything else that we're into. So check us out on the Cisco U as well. You're already here on our YouTube page. Check out what other videos we have. Follow along, see what other videos that you might be interested in. Let us know, drop us a line. I'm going to be enabling comments so you guys can ask questions on specific videos, and by all means, this is the type of content that we make from your guys' feedback. So thank you for those of you that have already submitted feedback to us, and anyone that would like to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and or just let us know what other content we can do better for you or make for you. Thank you in advance. We'd love to hear from you, and you guys make us better. So thank you. Just like the slide says. Have a good rest of your day, folks. Take care.